Hi brothers and sisters, we're back to finish up on the Queen of the South video, the information that we didn't quite get through. So I hope it'll be a short video, but usually when I say that they're longer than I think they're going to be. But I believe near the end of the last video we were talking about the double portion, and there's a lot of information that really corresponds to the idea that it is the daughters that do receive the double portion. So we find much of that information all through our Old Testament. Our New Testament also actually validates some of that understanding. So we had read in Isaiah 40, right, about the daughters. Tell her that her warfare is ended and that she has received double for her sins. So the idea, of course, would be then if she had received double for her sin, then she's going to receive double back, right? And the idea that you can kind of validate that from was, and we'll just talk about it, we won't go to the verses, is that number one, the Shulamite in Song of Songs, and I think it's chapter 6, verse 13, she's found with the camp of Mahanaim, which is called a double army there, a double camp. It says, what might we see when the Shulamite returns, as it is, or as it was, a company of two armies. So we see her with, in a sense, a double portion, because Christ in the New Testament actually indicates, when he says, know ye not, I could call for more than 12 legions of angels and swipe this world to hell. So what he's saying is, know ye not, I could call for one army. That's what he's saying. Because we understand that there's 6,000 angels in a legion. So if he's saying, or no, he said 12. Know ye not that I could call for more than 12 legions. What did I say? 12,000. So if there's 6,000 angels in a legion, times 12, we're looking at 72,000, and that's one army, is what we really kind of learn to understand. And so we see the Shulamite with a double army. So in a sense, she has a double portion. Not only that, but in Revelations 21, it says every several gate was a gate of solid pearl. And so that's 12 gates. We're told there were those 12 gates of solid pearl, but if it's every several gates, then it's every third gate. So there's actually 36 gates in the New Jerusalem. So if you take 36 and you minus 12, you've got 24. A double portion of gates is actually what you're looking at. So that's why I speculated that the gates that Solomon had daubed over, that he calls breaches in the Bible of David, his father, and his wall, that he daubs over, I speculated that there was possibly 24 gates, and that's the reason why. The other aspect of that is that when a woman gave birth to a son, she had to cleanse herself for 33 days. You know, her purification took 33 days. But if it was a daughter, it was 66 days, right? So again, you see this double portion in a sense, right? And we believe it to be women, all right, that is in view when it talks about the restoration of Zion. And part of that is due in part because Micah tells us that her stronghold will indeed be restored back. And it says the first dominion will come to the stronghold, the daughter of Zion. But we get further corroboration of that, or correlation of that, in Zephaniah chapter 3, when it says this. It says, sing, O daughter of Zion, shout, O Israel, be glad and rejoice with all the heart, O daughter of Jerusalem. The Lord hath taken away thy judgments, it says he, but she hath cast out thine enemy, the Queen of Israel, even the Lord hears 3068, this is mother, is in the midst of thee, thou shalt not see evil any more. In that day it shall be said to Jerusalem, fear thou not, and to Zion, let not thine hands be slack. The Lord thy God is in the midst of thee, and she is mighty. She will save, she will rejoice over thee with joy, and she will rest in her love. She will joy over thee with singing. And what does it say? This is where we really get the indication that she is absolutely talking about the feminine aspect being restored. And so, verse 18, it says, I will gather them that are sorrowful for the solemn assembly, who are of thee, to whom the reproach of it, that's your spurious language. These women, the idea here, to whom the reproach here is the reproach of the religious lie, the burden of the law, the shameful idea that Zion has played the harlot, and yet it says, let her eyes look upon Zion, let her be defiled. And yet God says, yet you know not the thoughts of the Lord, right? I'm just drawing you to my threshing floor. That's what she says in Micah. And so here we see these women who have been actually selected. It is a divine selection. I give that word under my last video. And it takes you to Romans 11. And it's speaking of Israel. If Israel, what? Has Israel not obtained that which she seeketh for? What she seeks for her children, the restoration of her children. That's who she's seeking for. So it says, what? Hath Israel not obtained that which she seeketh for? What she seeks for her children? But the election has obtained it. The election is the divine selection of the 144,000. And to whom the reproach of it was a burden. And yet in Romans 11 it says, if the casting away of them be the reconciling of the world, what shall the receiving of them be but life from the dead? So they are the ones that will give you life. That's what it's saying. But it says, who are of thee, to whom the reproach of it was a burden. 19, behold, at that time I will undo all that afflict thee, and I will save her. This is not me changing this. This does say her. Her that halteth, and gather her that was driven out. That's the daughters of Zion, the daughters of Jerusalem, the daughters of Israel, where you claim your birthright through, which were the women of Israel, not the men, all right? So, and gather her that was driven out, and I will get them praise and fame. There we go with the fame. Because they were defamed, all right? You go and you run down that series of words that we use to connect to who Satan truly was. And he came to be the accuser known as Baal, your husband, who defamed. He defamed her. He defamed the other half of his covenant by accusing her of things that she says she knows not of. And I believe she says that in Psalm 69. She says, they lay charges to my accusation. They accuse me of things, and I don't even know what they're talking about. So it was the righteous spirit that was being accused. She was being defamed. She was being told that she played the harlot, when in actuality it was Adam who played the harlot when he made a covenant with the harlot spirit, Lucifer, that has snuck into the garden. And it comes down to on him, because Mother says he gave his hand in covenant to you. And yet he perjured himself in the courts of heaven when he accused you. That's what he did. That's really what he did. We run those words out, a perjure. I wrote it down somewhere, but that's not what we were going to go over. But he accused her after he swore to her covenant, a promise to her covenant, and gave his hand in marriage, more or less is what it says, to her spirit. And so here we see, and I will gather her that was driven out, and I will get them praise and fame in every land where they have been put to shame. They were debased. They were defamed. And like I said, when you get down to who Satan the accuser was, it's truly Adam in the garden who accused the spirit, the wife, of his original covenant. And that's why it leads you to the passages in Micah where it says, let her eyes look upon Zion, let her be defiled. So, and they have been put to shame. At that time will I bring you again, even in the time that I will gather you. There you go with your gatherer. Your female assembler is what she's called in the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 12. They want to use the word preacher there. But it's really a reference to the Spirit at the end of days that will gather her children. And in particular, she begins with her daughters, which are known as the first fruits. All right, your principles. And so she says, I will gather them back. It's also allegorical to the horns of Ephraim in her blessing. It's her that's being blessed, not him. For I'll make you a name and a praise among all people of the earth when I turn back your captivity before your eyes, saith the Lord. So she agreed, in a sense, to bear the yoke. She knew the only way she'd ever have her children restored back to her was to actually bear the yoke upon her neck. And she's done that under man-made religious lies and law, which has yoked her. Now, we get further clarification of that it is the daughters of Jerusalem, the daughters of Zion, that is being restored back. And this is what it says in Micah 4, verse 6. Well, maybe, let me see here. Do we want to go back maybe further? Well, we can read verse 2. It says, and many nations shall come and say, come, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord and the house of the God of, not Jacob, Israel. And she will teach us of her ways, and we will walk in her paths. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. So you're talking about the restoration of the daughters of Zion back to their covenant. And the law that the first Adam cast down, the spirit of her covenant, he wanted nothing to do with it. But here we get, again, a reference to the daughters being restored back. So we know we're dealing with the divine feminine, this divine selection of women that are handpicked by the Spirit that is sitting to Christ's right hand. 136 is her number in Psalm 110. She handpicks these daughters that her Spirit will come upon, and she claims them as her pleasant land. Now, before I read this passage right quick, Isaiah 34 absolutely tells us what the day of the Lord is about. And it was about the controversy of Zion, and is about the controversy of Zion. The controversy of Zion was about the splitting of the pleasant land, regarded as woman, regarded as Israel. And they cast off a covenant with the righteous spirit. They did not want the spirit of this woman's covenant, which was a covenant of truth, love, fairness, equity. It was these were righteous laws that came from Mother God. The men cast that off, and they chose to build up a harlot spirit that would teach his laws. We're told of these two women in Galatians 4 in allegory, and that indeed Hagar does wear a yoke on her neck and her children. And so we're told the controversy of Zion, which is about the day of the Lord. What does it say in Isaiah 34? Verse 8, it says, for it is the day of the Lord's vengeance. This is the day of the Lord. And the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion. The controversy of Zion was about the splitting of the pleasant land into two covenants, and creating a covenant with a harlot that would build man up in his religious laws and lies that would govern this world. So that's what the day of the Lord is about. And everybody goes, rapture, rapture, rapture. Sorry. Nope, that's not how it works. You better go back in and study the Old Testament, okay? Because the guys in the New Testament got a lot of it screwed up, and they did it on purpose. Now, back to Micah 4 that validates this further. In that day, saith the Lord, this is verse 6, will I assemble her that halteth, and I will gather her that is driven out, and her that I have afflicted. Remember, they agreed to wear this yoke so that they could restore the children back. And I will make her that halted a remnant, and her that was cast far off a strong nation. They come out of, it looks like virtually every nation of the world. I know I was shown Israel in a sense in a dream. I had these four feminine arms coming out. I could only see from here I couldn't see their faces, and they were of every shade and color. So I know that Israel was not about a race of people. It was about the teaching of a theology, a spirit of Mother God is what this about the nation of Israel is about. It is about teaching truth, you know. And to be a daughter of Israel means that she handpicks you to teach these truths. She's going to use you to teach the new law through, or the original law through. And so, again, it's a divine selection. We're told that. And so she says, and I will make her that halteth a remnant. We know these are the remnant daughters. And her that was cast far off, a strong nation, the Lord shall reign over them in Mount Zion from henceforth even forever. They got a man reigning over her, right? No, it is the Spirit of Mother God upon her. That's what that is. And we're told in Zechariah, I forget which chapter, but it says the counsel will be between them both. And they've got it, a high priest and a king. Nope, wrong. It's the high priest Christ, who is the new male heir, the new Adam, who is a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. We see him seated in Psalm 110, his Numbers 113. And the queen, which is sitting to his right hand. And her Numbers 136. And she's his branch, she's his strength, she's the key of David, she's the government of God. And we've discussed it all. So in Zechariah it says, and the counsel will be between, the counsel of peace will be between them both. And they got a king and a high priest. No, it's a queen and a high priest. Wrong gender. And careful study leads you down that path. A straight path. That's where it leads you. And so they want to always put it's a man, because actually when you change from a harlot spirit covenant to a righteous spirit covenant, absolutely nothing changes as far as you know, the rulership of man over woman. It doesn't change. That's not wrong. Absolutely wrong. They took womankind and they shoved her under his foot, is what you see with the turned down cross, right? And then they teach as above, so below, I think is, no, it's not. No, it's not. They turned everything upside down, and she says that. She says that about the potter. In Isaiah, again, Isaiah 29, she says the clay told the potter she had no power. And that's what they did. But when you go to the word potter, and they won't give you this, but it's Hebrew 70, it means the birthing chair. The potter does. She who gives life and forms the clay, molds it in her womb, and then pushes it out in great travail. But the problem is he came to claim the vineyard as if it was his, and that she really had nothing much to do with it. And that's why she says in Isaiah 29, she says, you told the potter she had no power. The clay told her that. So she's saying the male told the woman she had no power. That's what he told her. So here we go. Verse 8, and thou, O tower of the flock, the stronghold of the daughter of Zion, unto thee shall it come, even the first dominion. The kingdom shall come to the daughter of Jerusalem. This is her that is being led in. They got son of man. Nope, it's daughter of woman. This term is used actually one time in the book of Daniel, and it is a reference to the daughter of Israel, or the daughter of Zion. And she is pulled back into, she is led to the Ancient of Days in the book of Daniel. They got son of man, like I said. It's not, it's the daughter of Zion being led in, and she is being restored back the dominion, the spirit of her covenant, because she says, her mother says, it always was yours. So now, why does thou cry out aloud? Is there no queen in thee, not king? Is thy counselor perished? For pangs have taken thee as a woman in childbirth. Now, we've looked at that before. And if we scoot down, we also know this is also a picture of Revelations 12. Be in pain, labor to bring forth, O daughter of Zion, like a woman in travail. For now shalt thou go forth out of the city, and thou shalt dwell in the field, and thou shalt go even to Babylon. There shalt thou be delivered. There the Lord shall redeem thee from the hand of thine enemies. She is redeemed when she begins to deliver her children through the law of truth, which is the original spirit of the covenant. So there she gets redeemed. And Zerubbabel, who began the building of the temple, is the one that also finishes it, and that's her, because the name for Zerubbabel, or the meaning of Zerubbabel, Babel, means a foreigner in Babylon, and that's what these daughters become. They become the foreign spirit in Babylon, which is currently where we all live, because we're all teaching this man-made religious lie from Baal. And from the harlot Jezebel that he exalts in his heart, because she'll teach his lie and build him up as God. Whereas Zerubbabel, or bubble, means foreigner in Babylon. They're teaching the spirit of Mother God's covenant, the truth. And by doing so, they restore the children back. And so, what does it say in verse 11? Now also many nations are gathered against thee, that say, let her be defiled, and let her eyes look upon Zion. But they know not the thoughts of the Lord, neither understand they her covenant. For she shall gather them as the sheaves into the floor. What does it say? Verse 13. Arise and thresh, O daughter of Zion, for I will make thine horn iron, and I will make thy hooves brass, and thou shalt beat in pieces many people, and I will consecrate their gain unto the Lord, and their substance unto the Lord. That's 113 of the whole earth. Because he is a high priest, after the order of Melchizedek. The Lord here is mother, their gain unto the Lord, mother. That's 3068. And their substance unto the Lord, that's 113, Christ's number of the whole earth. So, who's threshing and bringing in really the riches that never belonged to these wicked men and women? And she says to them, God says to she says, I will force you to vomit what didn't belong to you up out of your, I'll force you to vomit it out, because it never belonged to you. These riches that you stole belongs to me, really. And then they are restored back to her. From there the substance goes out, and it gets divvied up by, from what it looks like here, the high priest, the substance unto the Lord of the whole earth. Because the wealth belongs to the high priest to distribute, because they're given by Mother God, right, through her daughter, 136. And when we get studying the new temple of the New Jerusalem in Ezekiel 46, 47, 48, the prince meets the Lord, 136. And he comes into the temple, and then he goes back out, and he can distribute the portion of the riches that are gave to him to do with what he pleases. The other interesting thing that we linked to Isaiah 40, when she goes out into the wilderness and she is laying down the straight path, we see him come here, the Lord, after she's made straight the way. And the Lord that we're looking at in Malachi chapter 3 is Christ. Yeah, that's right. So just give me a second. So what does it say? Where's the verse I want? The idea is that he comes back to his temple, Christ, the male temple, right? And his purpose for coming back is to, well, he's ruler, number one, and is to teach the sons of the lineage of the priest line. They're called of the lineage of the Zadok. Is it the priest line in Ezekiel? That he teaches how to go in and serve the glory. That's what he does. And it says that somewhere in this chapter here. We'll find it. And it may be in Ezekiel that it says it. Verse 5, and he shall sit as a refiner and a purifier of silver. That's where it says it. And he shall purify the sons of Levi. Now the lineage of the high priest, we know, or the priest came from Levi's line. And we're told that they are the lineage of, I think it's Zadok, the seed of Zadok, or the sons of Zadok. Now I may have that wrong. And it's in Ezekiel, to do with the new Jerusalem. And I believe it was stated as being the lineage of Aaron, right? These high priests are. So what does it say here? It says, and he shall sit as a refiner and a purifier of silver, and he shall purify the sons of Levi, and purge them as gold and silver, that they may offer unto the Lord. The Lord there is representative of the glory mother, an offering in righteousness. And you can follow that down in the New Jerusalem when it speaks of the prince and the Lord, all right, that meets at the gate. And so actually you're seeing the counsel between them both, the queen and the high priest, is what you're seeing there. And I didn't actually mean to get into that. I wanted to wrap this all up. Okay, so we spoke on the double portion. We did Zephaniah. We did Micah. We did the day of the Lord, the controversy of Zion. And I think I've only got one thing left I wanted to add to this. And this was my comment on the North Country. Because we were speaking on the Queen of the South, wasn't we? And what we understood when we put the study together was that it is actually talking about Israel that is to the south of the North Country, Lebanon, which was where the living waters flowed from, and we discovered who took control of all of that. And but actually, they're also called the remnant of Israel, also known as the North Country, because that's where these daughters actually originated from, that we're talking about really being restored. And so I wrote a comment under one of my videos. I don't know if I removed it, but I always keep most of my comments in my personal files somewhere. And I'm going to read through this and show you the validation of how that North Country is actually Israel, the 10 north tribes of Israel that actually came from the house and the forest of Lebanon, which was called the government of God, the key of David, and they flowed like a living water. That over time, or at some point, we know that Solomon daubed the gates up and installed a harlot spirit in the midst of the body, which became known as the flock of Bozrah in the midst, and he changed that portion to a harlot portion that would teach his religious laws and lies, and exalt him as a great God and king upon this earth, which is then why we see we see the stone cut out without hands, which is allegorical to these daughters as the mountain. They will grow into a great mountain, and they smash, right, the 10 toes on that false image. Now the interesting thing is the Shulamite has 2 armies, right? So that's 144,000. So the numbers ain't quite adding up. So your brain thinks of a lot of silly things, and things that you know, that you've read about or that you've seen. And one of them for me was, is it possible it had 12 toes, and not 10? Because they speak of this being a genuine trait of the giants. They had extra digits. We know that David's mighty men went down into, it was winter, and slayed this giant that had 12. It had 12 fingers and 12 toes. And it you know, when you get studying it's a real trait in the world. It's a lot more common than you might think. And there, it appears theirs really functioned. Like they were of benefit to them, these extra digits. And so I just wondered if instead, it sounds silly, but yet there is evidence that suggests that the giants that roamed the earth actually did have 12 toes, 12 fingers. And so you wonder if maybe this false image of a king didn't have 12 toes, because the Shulamite has the company of 2 armies. So you're left with, if it is 10 tribes, which represents the north kingdom of Israel, and Judah represented the south kingdom. And the reason why we say that the queen of the south is Israel is because Israel is to the south of Lebanon. That's what we're looking at. And she flowed in, right, like a living water. And so, how do we account for the other 24 if it's 10 tribes is what I'm coming up against. And so we know 10 times 12 is 120,000. So where is the other 24,000, right? That's where what you're left with. Is it possible they're actually in Israel? But yet she's shown with 2 armies. So, you know, there's a bit of conflict there. I'm sure it will reveal itself over time. The Lord tends to do that with me. So, you know, a bit of silliness there. But let's read this comment. So, I wrote under the video, I now see what it was about Jeremiah 51:48 that I wanted to touch on, and I failed to. I wanted to again examine that term, the country of the north, that is we've continuously throughout Scripture, which only now becomes glaringly clear who is being referenced, and the more enigmatic verses of the Bible, where we are left failing to understand what this north country is actually alluding to. It appears to also be called by other names, and one of these names is found in Jeremiah 5, verse 15. Lo, I will bring a nation upon you from far, O house of Israel, saith the Lord. Now we discussed why it's Israel that this north country is coming against. Because the men of Israel began to exalt the harlot spirit in their midst. And you can validate that because it says, the stars of heaven fall like the leaves off of a fig tree. Israel is the only country, to my knowledge, so maybe I'm wrong on that, that is referred to as the fig tree in Scriptures. And so if it's Babylon that is falling out of the heavens, and we know that that's what that's a reference to, then why is she shedding leaves like a fig tree? Because we come to understand it's the harlot spirit exalted in Israel, because the men cast off a covenant with the righteous daughters. So it says, Lo, I will bring a nation upon you from far, O house of Israel, saith the Lord. It is a mighty, enduring nation. The Hebrew number there is 386. It is an ancient nation. That's Hebrew number 5769. Whose language thou knowest not. Now, God says in Isaiah 40, again, I will restore to you a pure language. I'm almost certain it's Isaiah 40. Now, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it was a different chapter. Maybe I do have the wrong chapter there. But God says, I will restore to you a pure language. A language that you don't understand. And that language is the language of allegory, I believe, that we've been examining on this channel. So it says, it is an ancient nation whose language you don't know, neither understand what they say. And that's validated by the priest who takes the word of God in Isaiah 59. Let's just look at that right quick. Not 59, Isaiah 29, sorry about that. I'm in Isaiah 40. So in Isaiah 29, the priests actually validate this, that they don't understand the language. Right? Isaiah 29, what does it say? Let's see. Verse 18, and in that day shall the deaf hear the words of the book, and the eyes of the blind shall see out of the obscurity and out of darkness. Nope, that's not where it is. Let me see. Okay, so it's verse 11. And the vision of all is become unto you as the words of a book that is sealed, which men deliver to one that is learned, saying, read this, I pray thee. And he saith, I cannot, for it is sealed. You know why it's sealed to them? Because they do not speak this ancient language. They don't know it, and they don't understand it. Because they are not part of this nation, this ancient nation. And the book is delivered to him that is not learned, saying, read this, I pray thee. And he saith, I am not learned. Verse 13, wherefore the Lord said, for as much as this people draw near me with their mouth and with their lips, do honor me, but have removed their hearts far from me, and their fear toward me is taught by the precept or traditions of men. And that's exactly what we have going on. Their hearts are truly removed from the true living God. They don't even know her. And any time you speak of the divine feminine and God as female, there gets to be this anger in their heart. And so she says, you have removed your hearts far from me. You don't even know me. And your worship of me is taught by vain traditions, the vain precepts of men who don't even understand it themselves. They can't even understand the pure language. And the pure language we come to understand is allegory used in the scriptures. And so, thou knowest not, neither understand what they say. So the word Hebrew 5769 means concealed. It means eternity, continuance, everlasting, and always. So this nation, according to this word, means a nation of eternity. Which nation did God say would stand forever? Wasn't that Israel? Once we begin to understand this term, north country, from reading through the verses that contain this term, we begin to understand God is actually referring to Israel, the 10 northern tribes where she scattered them out into the fields of the Gentiles. Now she promises her daughter Ephraim, Israel, the firstborn of her womb, that she would not only lay claim to the children of Israel as her birthright, but she would lay claim to the nations of the world. And that is why it's stated in Isaiah 27 that Israel will fill the world with her fruit. It becomes known as Israel, the world does in a sense, no longer Babylon, which is what we are known as. And so what does it say? So the word means concealed. Which nation did God say would stand forever? Israel. So once we understand this term north country from reading through the verses that contain this term, we begin to understand God is referring to Israel, the 10 northern tribes, where she scattered them out into the fields of the Gentile. We're talking about the women. And look at some of the following verses for clarification. Okay. So I will write a few out to give you some idea and reference a few more. So Jeremiah 23 verse 8. But the Lord liveth, which brought up and which led the seed of the house of Israel out of the north country, and from all countries whither I had driven them, and they shall dwell in their own land. Jeremiah 31 8. Behold, I will bring them from the north country, and gather them from the coasts of the earth, and with them the blind and the lame, the woman with child, and her that travaileth with child together. A great company shall return hither. See, we're talking about the restoration of the daughters of Zion. Jeremiah 10:22, and especially Jeremiah 6:22. These tell us precisely that God is referring to Israel, because Israel was made up of the 10 tribes of the north. So when God gathers them from the 4 countries of the globe, they are considered the people of the north country. Furthermore, it appears that it is this north country that comes against physical Israel that the Lord now calls Babylon, because they exalt the harlot. So as discussed in this video, I don't know which one it was, we know of the allegory in Revelation 6:13, that the host of heaven, which we know Babylon was exalted to the heaven, falls like the figs off the fig tree. Now who was called the fig tree? Well, that would be Israel. And yet here we have the north country coming against physical Israel. So why is it that you might ask, if you hadn't been keeping up with my videos? It is because the men of Israel and Judah exalted the harlot Babylon in their heart and made a covenant with her. They came to be known as Old Testament law, the Torah. But it is further alluded to in the verses that we already looked at in Jeremiah 5:15. But all of Jeremiah 5 tells of this event. But this verse in Jeremiah sums it up quite nicely. Jeremiah 50 verse 9. For lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from where? From the north country. And they shall set themselves in array against her, and from thence she shall be taken. Their arrows, their words, their children, you can look at this in many ways, shall be as a mighty expert of war, and none shall return in vain. So this verse takes us to that mighty army that is identified as the daughters of Zion, or this country of the north, in Joel 2, verses 1 to 11. They are coming against Babylon to crush her under their foot. This is further alluded to in Jeremiah 5:10. Go ye up upon her walls and destroy, but make not a full end, take away her battlements. This would be their stronghold, the daughter Babylon, for they are not the Lord's. So we know the doctrine that Israel came to be founded upon fed out to the four corners of the world, and that they did indeed exalt the harlot daughter Babylon on Mount Zion, and razed Zion, the righteous stronghold, to the ground. So we now have a much better understanding of where the north country is and who it actually represents. The 10 northern tribes of Israel that was cast out into the fields of the Gentiles, and we now know that they will return as a mighty army to take out the harlot daughter Babylon and the wicked men, and the covenant that they are founded upon that was fed out to the four corners of the world, that created a false foundation and also a yoke on our neck called man-made religious law. The true daughters of Zion are considered the mighty and the ancient, and the north country that will come against Babylon, who took their rightful place. We know the daughters were shot at by the men of Baal, as it is stated as such in Joseph's blessings in Genesis 49:22-24. Yet her bow, her covenant, remains strong by the hands of great God Almighty. And there we see it. So there was something there I wanted to comment right quick. Can't quite remember it now. But there we see it. I think I covered everything I wanted to cover on the wrap up for the Queen of the South. Yeah, we pretty much covered everything. And again, you know, it tells the men of this covenant that their foreskin will be uncovered, and shameful spewing will come upon their foreskin. That's what it states in Habakkuk chapter 2. Let's just read that right quick and then we'll leave. Still longer than I expected it. This is what it says in Habakkuk. There's Habakkuk. See, I always have trouble finding Habakkuk. So Habakkuk chapter 2. What does it say? We've done these two verses a lot. Woe unto him that giveth his neighbor. That was Judah putting lying theology to his sister, his neighbor's lip, Israel, the 10 northern tribes. Drink that puttest thy bottle to him, it says? To her. And makest her drunken also, that thou mayest look on their nakedness. So he made him drunk so he could look at his nakedness. No, the harlot is she. We also know that dog is a term for a male harlot. So it's really, you're both harlots. God calls the men dogs of this covenant, the Baal, the Belial, the sons of Baal, the sons of Belial, who was in covenant with, and she's called Al-Berith in some parts, but with the harlot spirit, Jezebel. And you're harlots. You play the harlot. That's what you do. It says he put strong drink to her lips so they might look on her nakedness, make her his harlot. So she would teach his religious lies and laws. But what is promised in verse 16? It says, thou art filled with shame for glory. Drink thou also, and let thy foreskin be uncovered. The cup of the Lord's right hand, there we go with the right hand, shall be turned unto thee, and shameful spewing shall be on thy glory, on your foreskin, on your covenant. So, you know, it's a lot of information to take in if you're just, you know, being exposed to it. But it is there, and there's no two ways about it. The information is there. You don't get away with saying he. You don't. God says you are without excuse not to understand my Godhead. I manifested it in the things that I created for your eyes to bear witness to. You do not bear witness to a he. And in the very beginning, God says, let us make them in our image. And God makes a male and a female. Not a male and a male and a male. And certainly not a male that gives life. And that one that gives life is the High Lord, is the highest of them all, because she is your life giver. I don't know why that don't reason out for so many people. We are actually waiting for the Holy Spirit. That's what we're waiting for in her arrival. And we know that she's already condemned us for judgment. And you know, there's going to be a fight back on that. They're trying to take away our right to speak. And it is largely because of the Holy Spirit being reborn upon this earth. They do not want you hearing her words of truth. They do not. And so they are looking at bringing in communism hard, I believe, and taking away our rights to speak the truth, particularly women. And but they will not succeed. It's clearly understood they're not going to succeed in stopping her, because God says she will be reborn, because she is the only one that can part those waters. And that is your spirit of Moses and the witnesses upon the earth, 144,000, holding no guile in their mouth. And to be of Israel means you are cut of her. And it does appear in some ways that these daughters actually share genetic information within their genome from the original Israel, these original daughters of Israel. There does seem to be some indication to that. God says, I know them. I know my daughters. I know Israel. I know the 10 northern tribes. I know where they are. I know each and every one because I handpicked them myself. So there we go. That's our wrap up on the Queen of the South. I hope there's some information in there for you to go study and look into. I thank you for watching my videos. I pray the Lord bless you with an abundance of truth and bless you with what you're studying. I hope you all have a great evening. It is, what is it, January 4th here today? I thank you for watching. And again, I hope you all have a really nice evening.